Welcome, welcome to our campfire session on the new Flint version 5.1 updates. Sohan's going to be doing a lot of the presentation today, but I'll be here answering questions in the comments if you all have any. Yeah. Feel free to take it away, Sohan.
Definitely. Yeah, a lot of familiar faces. Great to see all you all. Folks I've talked to before, nice to see you again. Folks I haven't talked to, hopefully get to meet one-on-one at some point. But yeah, today, like Lulu mentioned, we're going to be covering an overview of the recent updates, part of this 5.1 update that we launched at Flint just last week. So I'll be walking through mainly some of the different teacher and student tools that we've launched. And I also already noticed quite a few kind of administrators from schools on this call. So we'll also be able to kind of cover what's changed on the back end for Flint, right? As you're administering the tool for different students and teachers, we made some very highly requested improvements to kind of let you have better control over what students versus teachers can do in the platform. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen share, walk through a few slides. If any of you have had a chance to try out the new updates, and I did see some comments in the registration around that, I'll be kind of pausing after each section to let folks ask questions, but also to share how you may have found Flint to be useful since we made this last update just this past week. Awesome. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my screen share and walk through a few slides. So let me go ahead and do that now. There we go. How's that? Can you all see that? Perfect. So like I mentioned today or earlier, the biggest update we'll be sharing today are the different teacher and student tools that we launched at Flint. For the first time, Flint has a distinct teacher and student view, which many of you requested in the past and was probably one of our most highly requested features or changes to the platform. So general overview of what we're going to be covering. We're going to spend around 10-15 minutes covering some of the new teacher tools. I'll share both our reasoning for why we added them and give a live demonstration of how it works. We'll be doing the same for student tools as well. After both these sections, we'll have time to kind of discuss, share examples of how you've seen students using these tools as well. And then finally, we'll wrap up more with the admin side of things to show the clearer user roles in Flint and how you can specifically make sure that your students and teachers have access to these tools in the platform. And as always, the recording is going to be available 1 or 2 days after this session's over, and questions are welcome. So obviously Lulu's here with us for this campfire session. So any questions you have in the chat, even while I'm presenting, kind of walking through the basics, feel free to put them in the chat, and Lulu will be able to help you all out there. Awesome. So the first piece I'm kind of excited to introduce here are the teacher tools in Flint. And on the left-hand side here, I've kind of written down the question we asked ourselves as a team. And the right-hand side, I've kind of written out some example questions we've heard from folks and requests we heard from folks that led us to actually build this feature. And then we'll be covering a little bit more about our philosophy behind why we added these teacher tools into Flint. The question we asked ourselves.
Did Sohan pause for you all too? Got it. Okay.
Really focused. Oh, am I back now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, just to rewind a little bit, the main question we asked ourselves is how can we have teachers easily use Flint to use AI for their own augmentation? The main reason we arrived at this is we were getting a lot of requests from teachers and administrators, right? So a lot of teachers are asking us, hey, how can I use Flint to lesson plan, right? Like I like using it with my students, but can I use it also on my own time instead of a different tool like ChatGPT, Claude, or like that generic kind of chatbot you guys have in Flint? And then especially from administrators, we were getting the second area of questions, which was, a lot of our teachers love using Flint with their students. But we have some subset of teachers. I would say in most schools, this ranges from as low as 5 to as high as 50% of teachers that are like AI skeptics, right? They're not necessarily looking to learn new technology, or maybe they have some reservations about AI specifically and how students might be able to use AI. So how can we get them further along this journey of eventually using AI with their students for the benefits of personalized learning that Flint's great for? So as a result, we actually started to change our perspective as a company in terms of how we view AI and how teachers can use it independently to get value on their own. So a little bit of an embarrassing moment for me. I actually wrote this opinion piece December of 2023, so pretty soon after we started Flint, basically making the case that substitution and augmentation wasn't really a great use case of AI. And for anyone that's not familiar, this is the SAMR model of EdTech integration in classrooms. This is applied for all sorts of different forms of technology, and AI is just the latest shift. So we start at the bottom here with substitution. Whenever a new technology is launched, even let's say like Google Drive, a really easy way to use it is to use it as a direct substitute, right? Maybe take a pre-existing worksheet and put that into Google Drive. Then you have augmentation, modification, where you can use AI in more advanced ways to do things that weren't possible before. And then we have redefinition. Maybe this would be something like having a VR classroom where you can go on a VR field trip and actually explore an area live, or even watch a YouTube video about a topic instead of reading about it in a classroom. At Flint from the beginning, we viewed substitution in AI as pretty basic, right? And we viewed as substitution as the root of a lot of problems with AI integration. For example, students going in, asking AI tools like ChatGPT to write their essays for them, and easily getting a response. So we actually stayed away from that for a long time as a company, and instead mainly focused on modification and redefinition. So the case that we made with our product was, okay, we know that substitution's out there. Kids and teachers are going to use ChatGPT already. Let's provide a safer alternative where teachers can use AI in a new way. There's this great graphic that I found from this blog post from Stanford that basically highlights, and this was made, way at the beginning of the AI revolution, basically once ChatGPT came out, around how AI could augment and create new areas and new frontiers for humans to do work. So in the middle here, we have human tasks that machines can now automate. For example, unfortunately in education, this might be writing essays, and students, obviously really tempted to use it that way. We then have tasks that humans can do. And then we have this much bigger kind of superset of tasks, which are new tasks that humans can do with the help of machines. So now with Flint, we're kind of looking at all three of these categories instead of just the final one. So we're saying, like, what are ways that AI can actually augment pre-existing tasks that teachers can do, again, with that end goal of getting folks that are maybe a bit more AI skeptical or just new to the technology to get them some immediate results and value for themselves. So in a moment, I'll show you the teacher tools in Flint. And let me go ahead and pull that up now. And then I can also kind of share some of the main benefits of using Flint versus like a more open-ended tool like ChatGPT. Also, if you're already on this call, you're very likely already using Flint as your school as a selected AI platform, or you've at least signed up for the free version and tried it out for yourself. So everything I'm showing here, you're more than welcome to try on your own time as well. So this is the new Flint interface. Hopefully you've seen it by now. Again, we just launched this Thursday morning last week. And as you can see, when teachers and administrators now log in, they see this new panel up at the top. We haven't gotten rid of the activities. They're still down here at the bottom under this create an activity section. And you can still visit them by going to the left-hand side and clicking my activities, where you can now also more easily search across your different activities as well. But if I go back to the home page, you'll see that we basically encourage teachers to start a chat with Flint. And we have a few different preset prompts built in, but you can get pretty creative and click help me with something else and put in really any task, and Flint can help you in an open-ended way. As part of this, we've also reduced the restrictions available, or the restrictions put in place on teacher accounts. So teachers can use Flint in a lot of different creative ways. I'm going to give you all a quick demonstration of this now. For example, I can go ahead and click create a lesson plan. And Flint's going to tell me that it's an AI teaching assistant. So we preloaded that prompt in for me saying, hey, I want to create a lesson plan. And like a good teaching assistant, Flint's going to ask me some questions to get started. The great part of this is I don't have to fill out a form. I can just speak to Flint in natural language. So I could type, but I personally just like talking to AI. So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I'm an AP US history teacher. I want to teach my students about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I've got around 45 minutes to do it in my lesson today. So again, I'm not thinking about how I need to prompt the AI. I'm just kind of telling it what I'm looking for. Again, just like I would with a good teaching assistant. And Flint's able to take just that information and create a great lesson plan for me. Whenever Flint's pausing to think, it's going to say something like this and have this little kind of loading icon. So in this case here, it's saying, let me create an attachment. And an attachment in Flint is basically like a document that the AI is going to attach as part of this conversation. So I can say something like, go ahead and make it. And in a moment, the AI is basically going to go ahead and make that attachment for me, and I'll be able to review it as a teacher. Now, once this attachment's made, one of the benefits of using Flint as opposed to a more open-ended tool is you can easily incorporate these materials as part of your workflow as a teacher. So we do support the ability to print out these materials like a lesson plan as a PDF. You can also click this button here to export it directly to Google Drive, which I'll show in a moment, or you can download it as a Microsoft Word document. But right now I'm just going to go and close this sidebar to give us a little bit more space. And we can see what this lesson plan looks like. So we can see on the right-hand side that the AI has gone ahead, taken the information I put in here, and made this entire lesson plan for me. And on the left-hand side, I can see exactly its justification for why it made these different decisions and how it's maximizing student engagement. The best part of this is I can continue to talk with Flint like a teaching assistant, and it's going to remember my past conversation. So there's a lot of AI for education tools out there that make you a lesson plan real quick, but it's hard to then tie that in with other content that you're designing. For example, here, I'm going to switch tabs a little real quick here in the screen share. I've got this PDF of the Cuban Missile Crisis address that JFK gave to the nation back in 1962. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Flint, and I'm actually upload that in as a document for the AI to pull from. So I've gone ahead and uploaded that, and then I can give Flint another request. So I can say something like, during the lesson, I want students to read this speech, and then as an exit ticket, I want you to quiz them to see if they actually read it. So again, I'm kind of working with this teaching assistant. It's remembering what I told it before. And now it's going to go ahead and design an exit ticket for me based on the speech that I uploaded. And then in a moment, once that's loaded, I'll be able to go ahead and change anything about that exit ticket. Maybe I want to make it a mix of multiple choice and open-ended questions. I can even have the AI make an answer key for me. Again, because I'm on the teacher version of Flint, it's totally unrestricted in how it helps me. And then I can easily print out that exit ticket, upload it to Canvas, put it into Google Drive, you name it. I'm going to pause there, honestly, while the AI is generating that attachment. Any questions so far? Or any questions that haven't been answered by Lulu so far in the chat, is what I should say.
There's one from Tim right now saying when he tries to print his math lesson plan, the math remains in LaTeX code. Yeah, we see this happening sometimes in Flint. You might need to ask Flint to rewrite the equations in LaTeX Markdown, or just ask it to write it in plain text, and that might help. But it is something that we're aware of, and trying to improve.
Definitely, yeah. Sometimes Flint in these worksheets, you'll notice it's very text heavy, so it can struggle with some things like visuals. Sometimes they'll create the visuals separately, and then you might have to take screenshots and put them in yourself. Yeah. And then I think I saw a question from, or I think I saw a hand raised actually. Was that from Bob? Or is it no longer up? No, I think we're good. Awesome.
Yeah, I think we're good. Tristan did ask a question though. Once all students have submitted their sessions, is it possible to export the students' results, grade/analysis directly into a sheet or in Excel format in Flint? This would allow teachers to view the overall situation data of all students. Perhaps through the group analytics. But yeah,
that's a good question. Yeah. At the moment, I think that's a question more focused on the activities in Flint. Unfortunately, that's not currently possible through a direct feature, but it is something we're looking into, giving a CSV export. Yeah. Awesome. Going back to this exit ticket, and then Lulu, if you want to continue answering questions in the chat, that'd be awesome. We can see that's been generated for me here on the right-hand side. And you can see that the AI is basing this exit ticket off the materials that I uploaded. So here, this is a really simple example, but if you have curriculum standards or more text or documents you want to upload to the AI, it can use that as well. And you can go ahead and make changes to this. So as you can see here, it's made an answer key for me, which I can use on my own. But I could also go in and say something like, make this a 10-question quiz, or go ahead and also have students answer a long form prompt that's reminiscent of the FRQ question they would get on the AP exam. So you can basically use it to make leveled content for your kids and go ahead and export at any point. And then going back to the teacher view, just to kind of give a quick highlight of some of the other tools that we offer. There's also the ability to lower the reading level. So for example, I could have gone in and put in that Cuban Missile Crisis address and said, hey, make this more suitable for a 7th grade reading level. You can create a worksheet, although that's kind of a subset of creating a lesson plan. So you could always create a lesson plan and then ask Flint to make a worksheet as part of that. It can be used to make grading rubrics. And I'd say one of the most popular tools is probably this report card writing comment tool. So you could actually go ahead and give Flint some information on your students and have it write a report card comment in a specific format that you're looking for as well. And then to kind of wrap up the teacher tool section, and then we'll leave a few more minutes for questions about that, is a question of why you should use teacher tools in Flint. And if you're a teacher on the call, this is a direct kind of pitch to you. And if you're an administrator, this is maybe the reasoning you can share with some of your teachers that might already be using other tools, especially something open-ended like ChatGPT. Considering ChatGPT, the main benefit of using Flint over an open tool like that is that none of the data put into the system is used to train AI models. We foresee teachers putting in two types of sensitive data into Flint or generally into AI tools for their own augmentation. The first is student data, right? If you're using student papers for grading feedback or putting in information about students to get report card comments, that's really sensitive. You don't want an AI model being trained on that information. Flint obviously never uses AI or uses the information you're putting in to train AI models. And the second is copyrighted information, right? Like the Cuban Missile Crisis address is public information. No worries there uploading that into any AI system. But if you have like, let's say some textbook content from Pearson, you'd want to be careful that teachers aren't uploading that into an open system like ChatGPT unless they've turned off the right settings to make sure that AI is not being used to train on that content. So that's already kind of taken care for you on Flint. Additionally, you can create multiple pieces of aligned content, right? So I made that exit ticket that tied into that lesson plan, didn't have to do any prompting as part of that. And I can easily share my information out with colleagues. So for example, let's say I go back to that chat in Flint where I've got this exit ticket, I've got this lesson plan, I'm really liking this. I could bring it to Google Drive and send it to teachers that way, or I could click share, copy the link, and share that with one of my colleagues. They can go into Flint, they can view my past conversation, and even fork it so they can make a copy of that conversation, continue it on their own, maybe to make an easier or harder version of that same content. And then, of course, you can incorporate Flint as part of the rest of your workflow, including exporting to Google Drive. To kind of give you a quick overview of that, once you click this Export to Google Drive button, you're brought to a screen where you have to sign into Google. I can do that in a new tab here and show you what that looks like. And in a moment, I'm basically going to be able to view that exit ticket, in this case, right in Google Drive. And of course, I would delete the answer key or put that into a new document before I gave it out to my students. Awesome. Before we move on to the student section, I'll take a moment to answer some of the questions here in the chat. And if anyone has questions, feel free to just unmute or raise your hand. I'll start with the last one from Pierre. Do you think Flint could create slides in the future? Great question. It's not something we have directly on our roadmap. That said, we are looking at other forms of more interactive content, like letting students make flashcards, for example, kind of similar to what they could do in Quizlet. But it is something we're considering. So yeah, stay tuned. I'd say for now, you could definitely have Flint make the bullet points and headers for like a PowerPoint, but then you might have to put in, into that format yourself. Awesome. Any questions about the teacher tools before we move on to the student side of things? And feel free to raise your hand or just unmute. Yeah, Krista, go for it.
Hi, good morning, everybody. The taking away any guardrails for teachers, that's been, you say, for about a week?
Yeah, we just launched this Thursday morning, so just under a week. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the problems I was having as a teacher was in making the activities, this is hard to articulate, sorry. Like the more that I was trying to get the activity to be what I wanted it to be, the less it was being what I wanted it to be. Does that make sense? It's almost like I threw too much. It's like when you cook a dish and you use too much information and it becomes horrible. Is there a way that the recent update helps me not do that?
Yeah, it's a good.
Or is that just a learning curve? Because the other thing that's happening while I'm trying to do that is it's forgetting earlier things that I told it to do. And so I get confused as I'm going. I'm like, wait, no, I told you to use this bullet point list of 13 things, and now you've gone back to these 5 things. See what I'm saying? So it starts to, like, we both get flooded. And anyway, I'm just wondering how the teacher, if the lack of guardrails for teachers somehow reduces that cognitive load for both of us and frustration. Thanks.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a great question. So this update with the teacher controls won't necessarily impact your experience with building activity, but there are other changes that we made that could help. So for example, we've actually also upgraded the AI under the hood in Flint to generally make it smarter. I'll be covering more details on that later on in the presentation. So that should help the AI with its reasoning ability and responding to your requests. And then as a tip, Krista, one thing you could try in case you haven't before, is if Flint's ever getting something wrong, you could just tell it like, hey, you're getting confused, or can you explain your reasoning for why you made this decision? And it can actually explain some of its thinking as well. So for example, if you gave it a bunch of requirements but it's forgetting them, you could just say like, hey, wait a second, just tell me all the requirements you're actually following, and it'll be able to kind of remind you of what it's doing. Sometimes if the AI is getting tripped up, you can put it back on track that way. Awesome. And then Juan.
Yeah, kind of tied to Krista's question, is there a similar, you know how in the student, when you're creating a student activity, you can say build, you can flip between build with chat and build manually. I think, you know, something that could be helpful in the teacher version is if you can flip to the build, you know, build manually sort of window, kind of like how in a Claude project you can see the specific instructions. And so that's maybe a place where you could reference those 13 bullet points that Krista was talking about, and like double checking that those 13 bullet points are always captured, kind of like in Claude's project knowledge.
Yeah, no, I really like that.
Sorry, less into a question, but like was that something that was considered, like kind of adding that back end visibility on a conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, we don't have it for the conversations. One feature we are looking into adding to Flint is very tentative, and I'll share a little bit more near the end, is we're looking at adding a memory to Flint. So for example, if you give it certain guidelines, you continue using it as an assistant, you keep telling it, hey, I'm a 7th grade history teacher, it would ideally start to remember that and start to remember how you do things like a good assistant would. And then if you have used AI tools with memories, for example, like ChatGPT, teachers will be able to go back and possibly even see what that memory looks like, or ask Flint, hey, what do you know about me? And it would be able to give a bit more than like, hey, I know that you're a teacher and your name is Juan, for example. So definitely the direction we're hoping to head in, but I'll share some more concrete details when I have them. Yeah. And then, yeah, Dan.
Hi. One question right away that dawned on me. If the guardrails are kind of off on the teacher view, is there any possibility that school inappropriate content would show up if you're demoing something live with the students?
That's a great question. So the guardrails specifically for academic controls, like ensuring that students can't just generate essays or answer questions directly, those guardrails are turned off on the teacher view, but all the guardrails for like appropriate and inappropriate content are still there. So if a teacher asks for something inappropriate, Flynn will still push back just like it does with the student. And it will even flag those messages if teachers hypothetically were to go too far with that. Yeah.
Awesome. The other question I started like moving students into the student user and teachers in the teacher user, and there wasn't any kind of granular control over what students could or could not do. Is there going to be some level of more customization, or is it just you're a student or you're a teacher?
Yeah, for now, it's just you're a student or you're a teacher, and we kind of like a two-size-fits-all approach there that we've set as a company. We're exploring what possible customizations could be. So if you have any specific requests there, feel free to share that with our team, or it's like, you know, you have my email, you can shoot me a note about it. So we've talked to a few admins about it, but not something we're like for sure going to add just yet.
I mean, a big one off the bat would be limiting some students' ability to make their own activities because they can go pretty wild with that.
Got it. No, that makes total sense. I will say one of the benefits of this new update is that even when students are making activities, Flint now knows that they're a student. So if they were to put in like, hey, make me an activity, like do my homework for me or write essays for me, it would push back against that. But yeah, totally hear you on the request for like limiting it for some students regardless. Awesome. With that, I'll move on to the teacher tools section. Again, feel free to continue asking questions in the chat, even including about the teacher tools, or I should say we're moving on to the student tools section next. So with the student tools in Flint, kind of similar overview of what was our thinking as a team in building these features, and what were the requests we were getting from teachers, students, and administrators that led us to prioritize in the first place. So the question we asked ourselves as a team is, how can students use AI for good with the right guardrails in place, right? And there's definitely like that concern of like, you don't want to create a cheating tool that kids can easily use, you know, without any limitations. And the main kind of feedback and questions we were getting from teachers and administrators is how do we get our kids away from ChatGPT? And that isn't necessarily to get them to stop using AI, but ChatGPT is a very open-ended tool with no guardrails in place and also no visibility. So there's a lot of schools we were partnering with that were saying like, hey, it's great that, you know, students have access to Flint, but based on the network traffic, we see that a lot of the time they're just going to ChatGPT when they have an open-ended question, or sometimes they're using a Flint assignment, they also have ChatGPT open. So ideally, we want all of that activity to be happening in a single platform, where even if there's, you know, less controls than, you know, more typical kind of traditional ed tech tool, we can at least see what they're doing. And the second kind of piece of feedback, and this was something we heard a lot about at a recent Campfire session in late January, is we heard from administrators sharing that some students were already using Flint on their own to study. For example, there were students creating activities for extracurricular clubs, for example, like debate activities for like a debate or a mock trial club, or even activities to help prepare for exams. And they wanted to encourage more of that because ultimately it is a subset of the really, students that are already pushing themselves academically. So kind of on that point, if you head to the templates in Flint, I think to date, our second most popular template ever has actually been created by a student and shared with their administrator's permission to the Flint template library. And this is a student from Arizona who goes to Brophy Prep. And they've created this awesome template that basically lets their peers practice example essays for the AP Lang exam. And as you can see in this template, students can go in, say what essay they're practicing, whether it's a synthesis, rhetorical analysis, or argumentative essay. And the students actually preloaded this activity in, and this activity template in, with rubrics from the College Board. So we were looking at this data saying like, whoa, like some of our most popular templates are created, used by, and shared by students, obviously very academic in nature, still have the guardrails you want in place. And as a quick fun fact, if you were to actually go to Google and just look up AP Lang Essay Grader or AP Lang FRQ Grader, this template from that student is the very first result. So for us as a team, we were saying like, there's a lot of positive use cases here. How do we encourage more of this, right? If your school's already paying for Flint and students already have accounts, can they go use it beyond the traditional activities that teachers have already put in for them? So to that end, I'm excited to share the student-facing tools in Flint. And if you ever want to access them as a teacher or administrator, you can click this button, which I know is a little bit hidden, but you can click this for teachers kind of text here. And you can actually flip over this panel. So once I click it, it'll flip over to show me what the start a chat options are specifically for students. And of course, when students are using this, they'll have a lot more guardrails in place to ensure that they have to go in and ask Flint to write an essay for them. It won't actually do that. You can see here what those options look like. Students can basically click any of these options to start a chat with Flint. We let them upload their own material and have the AI quiz them on it. They can click this button, have AI tutor them on a topic, give them writing feedback, practice speaking a language, even help them research a topic by finding like primary sources. And one of my favorite ones, and I'll be showing you all this in a moment, is you can actually have Flint make a study guide for you. So let's say I go in as a student, I go ahead and click tutor me on a topic. Flint's going to go ahead and open up this chat window where it preloads in that as the initial message, just like it did for the activity creation, or just like it did for the teacher tools. And then I can tell Flint what subject I need help in, or I could upload in a visual. So for example, here, I'm going to actually upload in a diagram directly here into the chat. And as you can see, this is a diagram covering glycolysis in the cytoplasm. So it's like an AP Bio level diagram. We've got the Krebs cycle in there as well. So let's say there's part of this that I'm stuck on, right? I can go ahead as a student and actually draw directly on the whiteboard. So I can go ahead and point at this and say something like, I don't get what the Krebs cycle does. And just like that, by providing some visuals to Flint or even just asking a question, Flint's going to go ahead and give me open-ended tutoring help. And the best part of this is all the chats are still available and visible to school administrators. So you can see exactly how often students are using this, what types of questions they're asking, that sort of thing. Yeah, Dan, I saw you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just one of the things that was on the teacher side that would really be useful and create student autonomy would be the lower the reading level, especially with like middle school students. When they're doing research, they have high interest materials, but they can't access them easily. They can put it in and ask it, but it'd be nice if it was one of those automatic dashboard tools.
Got it. Yeah, no, I really like that suggestion. We'll see what we can do about adding it. In the meantime, one thing you could have students do is they always have this help me with something else option. So if I go in here and say something like, can you level some text for me? It's too hard for me to understand. Flint's going to say something like, yeah, sure, what's the text? And then it'll be able to help me in that way.
Oh, totally. And we can also create an activity and make it available, but having that dashboard there like makes it one less click away or 800 less clicks away or whatever. Thanks.
For sure. I totally agree with you. Yeah, and Wesley, see you have your hand raised.
Hey, this is Wes in Charlotte. Am I correct, though, that we still, as a teacher, want to create an activity if we want to see what our students do? Like if they're doing that chat on their own or that tutorial, the admins can see that, but we won't be able to see the interaction. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So as a teacher, you want to see what your students are doing. Definitely would recommend making an activity. This is more of an open-ended way. So if you have a student who like just wants to use AI for extra help, and you haven't had the chance to make an activity, or you want them to kind of go on their own path, you could nudge them to use this alternatively. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
For sure. So if I go back to that chat in Flint, you can see that Flint's gone ahead and given me a description of this process. And we've given it some prompting under the hood to kind of use best practices when tutoring. So it'll explain things in a very simple way. Typically, it'll ask follow-up questions and give students ways of kind of continuing that conversation. So it'll never just give a single explanation and wrap it up there. We'll try to draw the student in to have a deeper conversation about that topic. Yeah, Kelly, go for it.
Sorry, I had to allow it. Can you hear me? Yeah. Question, going back to, I don't remember who asked before Wesley, but is there one of the feedback that's happening is with the chat, it's coming out too much info, right? And even with trying to level it down, unfortunately, the kids aren't reading. And I know we have the listen, and I'm always asking them to do the listen too. Is there a way for our youngers, maybe it's even something on the backside if it comes in like as a Google, a Google group, as a Google group from LS, lower school or something, that this needs to be set down to a 5-sentence limit or a 6-sentence limit, because we're losing kids in the readability. And like, I love the reading because that's what we're teaching. We're teaching them to do reading comprehension, but I'm also teaching 8th, 9th, we're going up to the top. So yeah, look at all the thumbs flying. I like that.
No,
Okay.
for sure. It definitely seems like you hit a chord with that, with the thumbs up in the chat. At the moment, I would say if you're making an activity, you can give Flint some feedback to say, like, keep responses to 3 sentences long, like be really clear about that. Unfortunately, at the moment, in this kind of open-ended student tools, the AI doesn't know what grade level the student's at beyond being able to make some sort of deduction just based on the level of the content. So long term, we do want to provide Flint with that sort of data, either pulled in directly from an SIS, or it's something that Flint learns about students over time just through their interactions on the platform. But I would say for right now, it's something that teachers would have to put in on the back end and be really strict about how they tell Flint that. So not a great solution at the moment, but definitely something we're looking into.
So just feedback real quick. If it was pulled in on the PII on the Google groups, would probably be more likable by teachers and schools versus learning about, if we go and say, oh, the AI is going to be learning about your profile and it's going to adapt, then people are going to be like, oh, really? What are we doing learning from our kids? So just FYI.
No, that makes total sense. And the data is a lot cleaner if it's already coming from your system of record. So yeah, I'm with you there. Awesome. Real quick, I'd love to share one more example of the student tools, and then we'll cover kind of the pros of them and move on to the final section. So with the student tools, we've got this interesting tool called Help Me with College Apps. And honestly, it's very similar to the Help Me with Research tool. It's mainly in there to kind of spark ideas from students about how they can start to use Flint. And we know obviously college apps are very top of mind, especially for like upper school students. So if I go in here as a student, you'll see that Flint will give me a wide variety of areas that can help me with. And I can go ahead and ask it any sort of question, including a research question. So I grew up in Connecticut, up in Fairfield, Connecticut, if anyone kind of is familiar with the area. I'm going to pretend right now that I'm back, in 2016, I think, applying to college. I can ask Flint something like, hey, I want to apply to computer science programs, and I'm from Connecticut. What are the best schools in my state for that? And the nice part here is Flint will actually be able to go ahead and search the web, find some results for me, and give that information back to me. So this sort of web search functionality is something that's always existed in Flint, but what we found from our data is a very small percentage of students were going in and using this independently, mainly because of the lack of visibility that these features existed. So we're hoping that kind of nudging students towards saying, hey, you can use Flint for college help or use it for research assistance is going to kind of surface some of these use cases for them. And then, of course, again, all this is still visible to you as an admin, so you can go back and see, what are different students using Flint for. So I think I have an example of how that worked earlier. I can pull that up in a chat. And you can see that Flint actually went ahead and found some example colleges for me to apply to. I think I might have to click through a little bit to find that, but you can see it did that here. And in this case, it's gone ahead and actually cited a specific source from where I can then dive in and find more information. Awesome. Going back to the homepage, any other questions on the student tools in terms of what's available or any feedback to share?
Very quick follow-up on the university applications thing. Does it have much to say about, say, Canadian universities or other international options?
Yeah, for sure. So Flint can search the web for any kind of locality. So in that case, by default, it might assume United States if the students don't say anything extra. But if they go ahead and say Canadian universities, or I'm applying to university in this country, or I went to this specific international school, it would then be able to kind of specialize the answer to that. Yeah. And yeah, Wesley?
I know that ChatGPT and Claude now have like I think ChatGPT calls it a canvas, and it's like a doc that'll open, and that'll work for code as well. Is Flint doing that when you're going to be creating a document? And I'm especially interested for like coding scripts and stuff, or is it still just going to be sort of in the chat and then you're just copy and paste and move it over into a document?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so in Flint, we call them attachments, but they are very similar to like artifacts or the canvas in ChatGPT. I can show you what that looks like, but basically at any point, if you're like in a chat with Flint, the AI can create this or you can create it, but down here, there's a few different kind of attachments. You can open up a whiteboard, for example, or you could go ahead and just write a document. So if I click write a document, it's going to open up the document here, and the AI can also write to this. You can also do that for code as well. So it kind of has those attachments on the right-hand side, which make it a lot more interactive.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
For sure. Awesome. With that, and I apologize for the sirens in the background, recently moved to New York City, and there's a lot of that is what I'm learning. In summary, the main reasons, actually, let me go ahead and show my window. Give me 1 second. All right, should be a lot better. But in summary, these are the main reasons we would encourage your students to use Flint. And if you're looking for ways to kind of get them to use the platform, these are maybe some of the selling points you can mention to them. Like before with the teacher tools, none of the user data is ever used to train the AI models. So especially with students, under the age of 13 using the platform, a lot safer than what you're going to get from something like ChatGPT. In addition, there are those strict guardrails in place for student use. So if ChatGPT and open-ended platforms are against your school policy, you could recommend Flint as an alternative, as something where that visibility and guardrails are in place. And then finally, on that last point, Flint does have support for across all subjects. So for example, it can create code snippets for students, run that code, give them computer science help, but especially in math, unlike a lot of AI tools out there, Flint can actually do calculation on the back end, and math tutoring is probably one of the biggest ways we've seen students already using Flint for independent support. Awesome. With that, I know we're right at the 40-ish minute mark. I'm going to move on to the next section. Before I do, any questions so far based on the student tools?
We've just had we've just deployed the AI detection aspect of Turnitin in response to a teacher who's submitting student work to the college board, where they're doing a sort of, I would argue, inadvisable kind of gotcha version of AI detection, and have more or less banned it according to the regulations that I'm reading. I'm just curious how you're interacting. You're finding, as much as you're advocating for and supporting what seems like very reasonable use of AI tools in support of work, you're also there in a lot of American settings. So I'm curious just if you have anything to say about your interaction with College Board and maybe other places that might look at it differently.
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't have a strong stance as a company beyond that students should naturally build AI literacy by using tools firsthand. But when it comes to using it to produce final work, I think a lot of that final say is going to be on the arbiter of that content, let's say the College Board in that case, or we turn to the guidance of individual schools. So we're very in support of the different kind of AI policies that different schools have. Our general recommendation is just not to wholesale ban it, but we totally see the merits of saying like, hey, here's an assignment that you should not use AI for. And I'd say even the most progressive schools that we work with still have assignments that are, completely shut off from the AI. Yeah. But yeah, if anyone wants to chip in to kind of help answer Charles' question from the admin or teacher side, feel free.
I have one more question. So if my students are using the student-facing tools, I can't see them unless they submit the link. So is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. But your administrator would be able to see it. So it's going to show up in their dashboard and they can search for it.
And say I want to like assign my students like create an activity or like create the thing, and that's the assignment. how would other students be able to see that?
Yeah, so nothing's changed with the activities themselves. So when you create an activity in Flint, that's going to be in that separate area, like in My Activities, or you can go down to the homepage, down to your past activities, or make them through here. That's all the same as before. So the same kind of organization visibility applies. If you create something, your students can only see their own submissions to that activity, but you can see all the student submissions.
Right, but I would want students to be able to see each other. So let's say they like, you
Oh,
know,
okay.
help me with research and they create something that's really cool, or they whatever, they create something in this upper dashboard, and I
Yeah.
want that to be available to all students. How do they have to publish that like the girl did for the FRQ?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in that case, they don't actually need to manually publish it. What they could just do is click share and then
Uh-huh.
share the link out. So anyone with the link to this chat would be able to see it as long as they're within the school. And the chat link is impossible to guess. It's like a bunch of random characters, but if a student went ahead and shared it with a peer of theirs, they could certainly see it that way.
And what if I wanted them to be able to find them within Flint, right? Like that's what, like Vinny Vrotny has created these classes for us. Like if they shared it in the visibility to the class, could everybody see it there?
Good question. Unfortunately, there isn't a way to share a chat with an entire class. The best thing you could do is like put in the names of different people or their email addresses and share it manually there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
For sure. That's a great question. Awesome. And yeah, Carolyn.
Just a quick question. If I don't assign a role to a student, if it's unassigned, what is the default role? A student?
Yeah, the default role is a student, just to make sure that students don't accidentally get the teacher tools or something like that.
So I can leave them unassigned, or should you recommend changing manually? Because right now we're not connecting with our SIS or LMS, so I'm doing manually. I changed the role of my teachers, but the students, I just left them unassigned. Would you recommend putting them as students? They're like 500 students, so that's why I'm just.
No, for sure. I think in your case, it is actually okay to leave them as unassigned. The only caveat is when they log in, instead of it saying for students here, it's going to have a question mark here saying, hey, are you a teacher? But even if they click that, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to open up like a guide for admins in case they send that to you or something. But you can definitely leave them unassigned. And then next school year, I believe you all are planning on doing the SIS integration. You could just have the SIS pull that data in for you. Yeah. Awesome. And that question is honestly a great segue into the final section. Or Dan, yeah, you want to go for it?
Yeah, I actually ran into that, and there was a bulk assign role that I assigned everybody student, and then I went through and assigned the teachers back to teacher role, which was kind of the way I handled that.
Oh, yeah, perfect, actually. I can quickly show what that looks like. Carolyn, for you, if you go into manage members, and let's say you've already assigned the teachers, only the students are unassigned, it's going to say like, hey, you have like 500 members who don't have roles assigned. And you can just say, I want to make them students, and click update, and it's going to make all the unassigned folks students. So that is something you could do. Cool. And yeah, going back to the slides, and again, any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat for the next few minutes. Is that we've added clearer user roles into Flint. So this one was a pretty straightforward kind of task for our team to prioritize and address, less controversial in nature than some of the other kind of aspects of Flint that we've covered today. So the question we asked ourselves is, how can Flint better fit the needs of schools, which is something we always ask ourselves. And the main questions and feedback we were getting from administrators that led to this feature is asking for limits placed on student use, right? So even today, I've talked a lot about the guardrails that students have in the platform versus what teachers have. And previously, we had this paradigm of members and owners in Flint, which, while it did the job in terms of allowing teachers to make activities and easily share them with members of their group, with students, it wasn't really intuitive to understand that there were some kind of features that we were unable to add, like the stricter controls as a result. So with this new update to Flint, we've made a very clear distinction between what teachers and students can do. So on the left-hand side, we have this example mock-up of a student. The AI will help them, guide them, give them practice, encourage thinking, but it won't ever do the work for them. But for teachers, will act much more open-ended as an assistant. And like Carolyn and Dan were asking kind of the questions earlier, if you go to Flint as an administrator, if you log in, you're going to always see that teacher view immediately. And if you want your teachers to also see these teacher tools up at the top, you're going to have to make sure that they're assigned as a teacher or an administrator in the platform. The way you can do that, and there is a guide that covers this, is you can go ahead and click Settings and Members, click Manage Members, And any folks you see in the platform, you're going to want to make sure that their role's been changed to a teacher. But by default, if they haven't been assigned, or if you haven't pulled that data in from your SIS, for example, through the rostering import, they're going to be in there as unassigned. And folks that are unassigned will not have access to the teacher tools, just as a kind of guardrail. So if you have any questions about this process, feel free to shoot Lulu or I an email. In the chat here, I'm going to go ahead and put a guide that covers the steps for this. So if you want to go ahead and bookmark that, feel free to do that. And that guide you can follow as an administrator to basically make sure that teachers have the right access to the teacher tools in Flint. And going back to the slideshow, one of the final updates I have to share is that as part of this update, we've also upgraded the AI that Flint uses. So this is something we do periodically. As new AI models come out, we're constantly testing and evaluating them. Claude 3.7 Sonnet came out very recently. I want to say like around 2 weeks ago. And we're happy to share that we were able to implement this one really quick. So it came out with this larger update last Thursday. There's not a huge difference between Claude 3.5 Sonnet and 3.7, but it is better at some reasoning tasks and especially at math. So you might see some improvements in how it's able to kind of tutor students in those topics there. Generally, as these models get better, they're just getting smarter overall. A lot of the requests we're getting, for example, from Krista from earlier, are around how we can make the AI generally understand teacher requests better and better kind of mimic what the teacher's looking for in terms of acting as a TA with their students. So this update should also help with that. And then one final thing I wanted to cover is one thing we have in the works that we're ideating as a team, really excited about, although I don't have a clear timeline to share just yet, is adding memory for Flint. So long-term, we want Flint, especially for teachers, to understand what teachers are looking for, understand some basics of their teaching style, and we feel that's going to make it more effective as an assistant, and it's going to have to ask you less questions to get started, right? If Flint always remembers what math class you're teaching, doesn't have to ask that question every time. So keep an eye out for Flint generally getting smarter because of persistent AI updates, but then also because it will be remembering some things about what your teacher's kind of personal preferences are. Awesome. That's pretty much it for me on that end. This is a QR code that you can use to register for future events. And in the next kind of final minutes, I'll actually pass it back to Lulu to share what campfire sessions we have coming up. These none right now are scheduled all on the calendar, but we have some exciting stuff for later this month and especially heading into April.
Yeah, thanks, Sohan. Yeah, so I'm out next week, so that's why we had like 2 back-to-back sessions this week. But the week after that and the week after that, so last week of March, first week of April, we're going to plan 2 sessions on IB exam review and AP exam review. So how teachers can help create activities and help guide students in how they can review on their own as well. So I'm in contact with some teachers trying to see who can come and share their experiences about that. And once that's available, I'll send out the invites for the sessions there. But yeah. If you all know anyone, let me know. Great, yeah. I guess that's everything. If you all have any additional questions, feel free to unmute and ask now. Otherwise, have a great day. Thanks for coming to this. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Really interesting.
Thank you.
Have you all looked at a direct Canvas export for quizzes into QTI?
Good question. Jinso, I know you're on the call, not to put you on the spot, but you have any thoughts to add there? Jinso is our awesome CTO. But yeah, I see you unmuted.
Wait, sorry, I was doing the coding stuff.
I think the question was around like direct Canvas integration for assignments, right, Wesley? Like grade export sort of thing.
Yeah, I've been doing it with ChatGPT and exporting successfully to following the template of the CSV, but then I'm having to use that Kansas State converter to actually get it into QTI. It's not a horrible workflow, but it would be super sweet to just be able to directly, create the quiz and be able to, bring it right into Canvas.
Yeah, we definitely have it on the roadmap, but we might start it with having the teachers be able to export as CSV. That will be the first step, and then once that goes well, we're definitely gonna look into the direct integration.
If you can, if it'll even do the CSV, that little importer tool. I'm doing AP computer science for the first time, stepping in and jumping in, but it's been phenomenal to be able to use that Canvas quizzing tool. So any way that you guys can integrate with that would make Flint even better for us. So it's awesome. Thank you so much for this update. This was extremely helpful.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, if anyone has any final questions, our team will stick around for a few more minutes, but if not, it's been really great to have you all. So thank you for making it.
Hi, Lulu. I was just seeing your chat. So I think teachers typically can see student content. So filtering it would be great. So like a class structure inside Flint would be amazing. So you could assign teachers to see specific students. But as it is, typically a teacher can go see student information and wherever. What I think is more, I saw there are concerns about the privacy, but I think the other concern is even bigger, where students can be creating content using the base tool in Flint, and their teachers can't access it unless they go through someone who has admin. And you don't really want to make all the teachers admins because that is problematic. So somehow or another, connecting the teachers with their students' content at base, like they could access all student content, but if not, creating a group, if they could see the students in that group or whatever, like some mechanism for them to dig in and see all that content. Because right now, it's often the case where admins are this weird, there's like a technology admin, but there's also platform admin. And so one is like, how does a platform work? And the other one is, how does the content work and how does that work? And so not making the admins a gatekeeper on the content would be great, because that just is one more barrier between the teachers and seeing the full experience of what their students are doing.
Got it. That makes sense, Dan. Yeah. We can definitely discuss this as a team. I'm not sure what exactly the technical limitations are, but I think theoretically it makes sense to have.
Yeah, it's almost like what I was talking about earlier, granular control on the different roles. So their admin has a certain set of like things it can do. Teachers has a certain set of things it can do, and students, like being able to check things on and off, either for a class of users or for individual users within that class. Not class like school class, but group of users, right? And type of user. Like, hey, this teacher is really good. Let's give them the ability to, look at all the student content, or this student is really having trouble. Let's turn off their ability to make activities for now. So like the kind of granular control you see in other platforms with user types would be a really powerful next step.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Transparently, one thing we're struggling with there is like, I think some controls are no-brainer over time as the platform matures. We'll add in, for example, it might be like letting you decide which grade levels of students can make activities or something, right? Because Flint by nature is very open-ended, and students can make a chat that might like be bridging two different classes or might not directly be within a class. We don't know who should get visibility. And so far we've been against the idea of like giving teachers visibility over their students' chats in all kind of areas in case students are using for something that are just like outside of that kind of topic area. So that's one thing we're still kind of figuring out, but yeah, I'm with you there on like the more fine-tuned controls at the very least. Yeah.
And I think that may be one of the places where I don't know how much of your focus is elementary and middle schools versus high schools. And this is something where actually a group of the tech educators in the Boston area created a elementary and middle school tech educators group, just because most tech assumes high school and works down. Right. And that's a very high school perspective. With upper elementary and middle schoolers, sometimes you really, really do want to see all of the content they're creating on a platform, because they are still developing their ability to do so in a productive and constructive way. And catching some of those things in time rather than being reactive is really powerful.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah. So even if it's like a grade level or division specific. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. James, yeah, it's nice to see you. I see you're yeah.
Hi, Sohan. Hi, Jinso. We saw one another in Copenhagen. It's nice to connect again. So, I mean, I've got a question that sort of segues from Dan's, which is about transparency and explainability. Because so in the EU, this is going to become bigger and bigger with the EU AI Act, and not only with the student content that they're creating, but also knowing where the information is coming from. So, for example, if you want to create a lesson plan, it'd be really useful to know that that's coming from certain syllabus or curriculum or certain websites, just to be able to say, if people question, hey, where's this information coming from? I don't know how feasible that will be, but I wonder whether that might be a consideration for the future, just for those parents, users, teachers, students who want to know how Flint is reaching the conclusions and creating the content that it is.
It's a great question. So far, the way we've approached that is like, as a teacher, you can upload anything you want. You can kind of provide your own links and everything. But one request we've heard from some schools and districts is, how do we ensure that teachers are pulling from the same pool of content? For example, like let's say we have certain curriculum standards that our school abides by. Can we have that preloaded into Flint and then have teachers just select from there instead of having to upload it on their own every time? So right now it's like very open-ended. It's really just totally up to the teacher, like what you upload or don't upload. But yeah, I can see us heading in the direction of like closer alignment with like, you know, curriculum standards out there, or even letting schools like upload certain documents and then letting teachers select a subset of those documents. So,
sure. Yeah. Or even maybe you already have this feature, but just limiting. So I upload and say, only look at these documents that I'm uploading, because and that's is that already a feature? Is that already possible?
Yeah, definitely. So if you created like a lesson plan, for example, but you basically upload the content you wanted to use, or let's say you create an activity for your students, but you upload only certain vocab words that you want the AI to use, it would be able to stick to that. But now you might have to be specific with the prompting, saying like, hey, only stick to this, really don't go beyond this, because sometimes AI will try to connect dots here and there if there's something missing gaps. But yeah, you can certainly tell it to only stick to content you've given it.
Okay, super. That's good to know, reassuring. Okay,
sure.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
No, it's good to see you. Yeah.
Similar question, like instead of a school-wide, could we even have like a teacher briefcase of documents that we commonly use, so we wouldn't have to keep uploading them like as an intermediary step?
Honestly, yeah, I like that request. Jinso, do you have any thoughts to add? If not, I can just log it internally for us.
So, sorry, I was in
yeah,
the
no, I'm
mode.
like pulling out of the zone. Yeah, the question was basically like, you know, we've talked about having like a school-wide library of documents. Thoughts on having one for like teachers? So if I'm a teacher, I'm uploading the same rubric every time. Could I like pull it out of Flint next time? Like it's kind of got like my own Google Drive built in or something? I think you're muted, by the way.
Oh yeah, it's good. Yeah. Sorry, I haven't slept for like, I don't know, 24 hours or something, so my brain is a bit fried. Yeah, speaking of school template, school libraries. Yeah, so right now we only have a public template where it's public to everyone, but we are thinking to add a school-specific library, so it's more like local to the school, so people are more comfortable sharing with each other, and then admins can like use it to roll out better to the teachers and students. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think like kind of like tying into what you're asking, Dan, like maybe we could have the ability for teachers to make like a pre-made activity with the same content uploaded in, and they could like come back to it, easily share that with their colleagues possibly.
Right. So instead of having like things specific to my class on the whole school library, but if each teacher had their own kind of briefcase of documents that they use on a regular basis that, you know, I could pull from instead of having to upload them each time, that would be super useful.
That makes sense.
So,
like a built-in My Drive kind of. Yeah. Yeah.
Just to add on to Dan's point, I had a question about, just out of curiosity, have other teachers used Flint in a different capacity other than the content class that they teach? Because Dan like gives me the idea of like, I know some districts, our districts, we have like flex time, which we use for like enrichment and intervention. But to Dan's point, if the school site, maybe not the district, but the school site itself had a bank of like all right, these are the current units that the teachers are working on, regardless of what class they pick for flex time or intervention. They can come into my class and they can go to Flint and they can start working on that current assignment. So I think using it in other capacities, and this is going to really be based off like your school site, and some districts have adopted flex time advisory and intervention enrichment, and it varies from site to site and district to district. So the district may have adopted it, but the specific school site may have not, adopted it. And for people that don't know, advisory is like a 35-minute period that's teachers can use, like the Teach More app or a different app, and students can sign up for their own teachers or classes for a 35-minute block. And they can sign up for teachers that they don't even have on their actual class schedule.
I see. I know some of the schools that we're working with are using Flint almost exclusively just within their like learning support teams. So I think that's like kind of similar to what you're saying. But from like a district to school level, since I believe like it would be the school that has the workspace and not the district with like a big workspace of all the schools. Perhaps the district could publish the templates for the schools to then move into their own workspaces so that each school has like the same sort of templates where students can go in and get the extra help. Yeah, or maybe once we have like the school libraries, that would also be a good way of doing it. But yeah, that's a good idea. I do know like some individual teachers are using Flint to support like individual students in their learning journeys, and then some schools are using it mainly in their like support teams.
But could that be like a live thing, Lulu, where teachers are constantly each school year uploading like their current units versus just having like a template, a set bank, and that's it? Because teachers constantly kind of retweak their unit from school year to school year, but like having all their units uploaded in a place where students can kind of reach them, similar to almost like Google Classroom. Like I have an assignment on Google Classroom, it's on there, but it's more intuitive in terms of like it's personalized learning, and I can actually have Flint help them on that current assignment, because that's what those support classes are for, in terms of getting like that one-on-one support, and they're made to be like smaller numbers. But they're also used in reverse in terms of like there's also enrichment during that class, right? So if there's a current assignment that is more advanced or extra credit, they can do that during that time as well too.
I see. Yeah, I think so. Every school year, Flint kind of resets, and you can import old activities from it if you want, but you could also then like replace the old ones with a new one if you do update your curriculum. Yeah. That's really neat. Thanks for sharing. Great. Any other
Awesome.
questions?
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for coming and for staying after, asking questions and everything. I think we can wrap it up there, but yeah, I think we have our emails. Mohammed, I know we've been trying to find a time to connect, so we can definitely make sure to do that. But yeah, it was great to see you here for sure.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Recording should be available tomorrow morning. And
So-
you'll get emails about that. But yeah. Thanks. Have a good day.